Okay, in this video we're going to look at a couple word problems with quadratics. Okay, and for most of this I have the answers already done out just for the sake of time on this. So when you look at number 1, let P of t equals t squared minus 8t plus 64 represent the percent of Americans at t years since 2000 who think that the environment should be protected even at the risk of curbing economic growth. So find P of 10 and explain its meaning. So P of 10, this is using function notation now, and in place of t we have a 10. So what they're telling you is 10 is the t value, which means 10 years since 2000. So whatever we get for an answer is going to represent the percentage of Americans in the year 2010. Okay, so like I said, I already have the answers made for this. Okay, so if you want to pause the video and do that one, go ahead. Okay, but I'm going to put the answer up. Okay, so when you substitute 10 into your function, you get 84, which means in the year 2010, we predict 84% of Americans to think the environment should be protected, even at the risk of curbing economic growth. Part B, find t when P of t equals 73 and explain its meaning. Okay, now this is something that you really have to get straight in this class, is with function notation. That first one, P of 10, notice that 10 was your input for t. Well, here, we're saying that P of t equals 73. It is not saying that t is 73. If t was 73, that means you're looking at the year 2073. And they would write it as, and if they wanted that, they would write it as P of 73. It is not the same thing as P of t equals 73. Okay, they do not mean the same thing. They mean just the opposite. In this one, P of 73 would mean you're looking 73 years since 2000. P of t equals 73 means your output is 73, which means 73% of Americans think the environment should be protected at the risk of curbing economic growth. So here, P of t equals 73. In place of P of t, you're going to put 73. So our equation will be a quadratic equation. You set your function, t squared minus 8t plus 64, the one they gave you, equal to 73. Now that's something that we should all be able to solve now at this point by getting it equal to 0 and then factoring or using the quadratic formula. Okay, so again, if you want to pause the video and solve that, go ahead. But I'm just, for the sake of time, I'm going to show you the answers. Okay, that one does factor to t minus 9 times t plus 1, and you get 9 and negative 1. So those are the years since 2000 when you would expect 73% of Americans to believe that the environment should be protected, even at the risk of curbing economic growth. Okay, so those 2 years, 9 would represent the year 2009. The negative 1 would really be going back in time, like 1 year before 2000, which would be 1999. Okay, part C, finding the vertex and explaining its meaning. Well, remember the vertex, you find the axis of symmetry first. Okay, so the x value, or in this case the t value, okay, the input is t. So that's t equals negative b over 2a. Okay, and again, if you want to take a minute and do this on your own, go ahead. I'm just going to keep on plowing through this though. So negative b over 2a will be negative negative 8 over 2 times 1, which will be 8 over 2, which is 4. So that is the axis of symmetry, t equals 4. To find the vertex, you have to substitute that value in for t. So go to your original function, which was t squared minus 8t plus 64, and you're going to substitute 4 into that. Okay, so t squared will give you 4 squared. 8 times t will give you minus 8 times 4 plus 64. Okay, so the vertex will be at 4, 48. So that means 4 years since 2000, which will be the year 2004, we had 48% of Americans who think the environment should be protected. Now, you have to be a little bit careful with the wording on this because the vertex is a very specific point. that 48% is actually very important, or very specific, as far as what it means. Well, remember that a vertex is the highest or lowest point. In part B, we found that after -1 and 9 years, we had 73% of Americans believing the environment should be protected. Well, 48 is lower than that. So that means that that 48% is a minimum, not a maximum, but a minimum. Okay, so the way you word your explanation in 2004, and that's coming from the T equals 4, we expect the percent of Americans who think the environment should be protected even at the risk of curbing economic growth reach its minimum of 48%. Okay, using the word minimum there is important because it's a vertex, means you're specifically looking at a maximum or a minimum, so you have to figure out which one it is. Okay, the next question, number 2. Okay, this is just a basic quadratic question that you see. Okay, throwing an object into the air. Okay, in this case, a ball gets thrown into the air. So I'd say pause the video and try the first couple here, parts A and B. Part A, you're trying to find h of 1.5. Again, there's nothing really new here other than the fact we have quadratic word problems, but it's just using function notation here. So put 1.5 in place of t and explain its meaning. And then when is the ball 4 feet high? Okay, that means that h of t equals 4. You're not putting 4 in for t because it doesn't say h of 4. When is the ball 4 feet high? Means when is the h of t 4. So you'd have 4 equals -16t squared plus 64t plus 4. Okay, so go through and solve those two. And I'm going to put the answers up for the sake of time. Pause the video if you need to. So in part A, we get h of 1.5 is 64. So after 1.5 seconds, the ball is 64 feet high. And then in part B, when we solve this one, notice what happens when you subtract 4 from each side. The 4s cancel each other out, so you get 0 equals -16t squared plus 64t. Okay, that's a 6 there. It's hard to tell. And then you can do a common factor of -16t. And there are several ways you can solve this one. You could use quadratic formula if you wanted. You could factor it a little bit differently than what I did. But in either case, you should get 0 and 4 for your solutions, which means after 0 and 4 seconds, the height of the ball is 4 feet. Okay, then moving on to part C, when is the ball 52 feet high? That's very similar to part B. Other than 4 feet high, we have 52 feet high. So you solve the equation 52 equals your -16t squared plus 64t plus 4. And then you go through and solve that. And again, pause the video if you need to. Okay, but that gives you 1 and 3 for your solutions. So we have 1 and 3 seconds, the height of the ball is 52 feet. And then finally, part D, the vertex, you do t equals -b over 2a. So that'll be -64 over 2 times -16, which will give you +2. Substitute that into your function to find the y value, or the height. Okay, so h of 2, and that'll give you 68. And then because it's a vertex, we know that the ball is at a highest or lowest point. Well, in this one, we already found values where the ball was 52 feet high, and in part B it was 4 feet high. So that 68 feet, that's higher than those, so that vertex will be a highest point. Okay, so after 2 seconds, the ball reached its maximum height of 68 feet. Okay, so that's just a couple basic word problems using parabolas and function notation. And a big thing that people miss on these is, like I said, like in part B, they'll put 4 in place of t, and they'll do negative 16 times 4 squared plus 64 times 4 plus 4. They get an answer for that, but you're doing totally the wrong thing. You have it just the opposite of what you need. Because the 4 feet high, 4 feet is not a time, that's a height. Okay, so just make sure that you understand function notation on these. Okay, and that's it for that.